When we talk about the impact of AI on the future of work, we've barely scratched the surface. Most of the conversations are centered around how AI is going to take away jobs. But the real crux of the matter is how AI is really going to change the composition of the workforce of the future between full-time, gig, contingent employees, and even bots as employees. And how should HR really future gaze in a way to start framing policies, frameworks, and processes to incorporate this new employment structure and these new types of bot employees and how to deal with them. Let's close the loop on this. Joining me on Close the Loop is Reetu Raina. She's the VP and Head of Talent Management at Amdocs. Reetu, welcome to Close the Loop.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you for inviting me here.
Sure. So today I traveled to Pune for this conversation, and at the airport I went through the whole Digi Yatra experience, and I saw that my face was being scanned by a bot, and I just realized that the world of bots may have entered our lives a lot more than we actually think they have. What are your thoughts on that?
You are so right, and I think we are seeing it every day in our lives. Right from morning to the evening, we are only chatting with the apps, or we are chatting with some technology which is helping us to live our daily lives.
Right.
But when you look at more closely, everything around us is getting disrupted.
Correct.
Sometimes it's overwhelming, sometimes it is scary.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at even more closer to the function of human resources, I always take an example of COVID. When COVID started, prior to that, we always used to say that, human resources is an administrative function. It helps the organization. Suddenly, we came at the forefront. Why? Because the humanity was at risk.
Correct.
So we had to be at the forefront. And now the irony is today, there is a merging of boundary happening between man and machine.
Correct.
Now, in this merging of the boundary again, HR as a function is getting disrupted.
Correct.
Because as a whole, if you look at human resources, what do we deal with? We deal with people who are together helping the company to achieve their objectives.
Right.
Now, when this boundary between man and machine is getting disrupted, it fundamentally changes three things. How the work is done, who is doing the work, and what is the kind of the work.
And even from where it's done.
Exactly. Whether how, what, and where it's getting disrupted. So I think for us as a function, we are living at most interesting, but at the same time, most disruptive times.
Right. But when you look at the conversations around AI, I feel like you're raising very pertinent points. But I just feel like the general discourse, even within the HR community, is still centered around, will we lose jobs to AI, or will we just automate something? It acts as a tool and just helps you become more efficient. So what do you think is the real impact? You mentioned that the impact on who's going to do the work and where and how it's going to be done. So can you go deeper into what you think? You can future gaze and say that how might AI really change the composition of the workforce itself?
I think it will change the composition drastically. Just think about the way organizations were formed post-industrial era. You had a line of business, there is a production line, there's an assembly line, and job is to be done.
Right.
So eventually the organization started forming structures, the human resources and other departments. Now eventually in the technological era, the human capital or the knowledge economy became very, very important. So we started changing ourselves. So you still had something which was constant, which was people and company, which means people are employed by the company.
Right.
That was even pertinent or relevant in the knowledge era. But what is happening now, that basic premise itself is changing. Because the concept of job is what is your capability to deliver the job, and where from you will do it, how you will do it, what part would be outsourced to machines, all that is changing.
Right.
So when there is a disruption in the premise, it makes it even more challenging, which means if I future gaze into the world, right, in say another 10 years or 7 years, 10 years is a long time today's days.
Yeah, probably a few more years down the line.
Few more years down the line, people may not want to work for one company. They will say, I am skilled enough, I'll work for 4 companies.
Correct.
Company may not want to take the I won't say liability, but they would say that, I'm not sure about my business model.
Yeah.
Do I need so many people to be my FTEs? People will start becoming more self-managed,
Correct.
outcome-driven. Then you will say, oh, do I really require so many FTEs?
Right. So automation becomes the core employee.
Exactly.
And then the actual human employees some of them may be full-time, but then others may just come and...
Exactly. So you will see a drastic change in the composition.
Right.
And that would be, what is your FTE? It might become your gig.
Correct.
What is your gig percentage? It might become your FTE percentage.
Exactly,
And then you will have the machines doing the job, and then
Right.
you'll have contingent workforce.
It's almost like the entire human resource function has to be rebooted and retrained to think of this world. Because if you look at all the education ecosystem, the professional training ecosystem, the professional experience as well that HR leaders gain, it's all rooted in, let's say 70-80% is FTE, then 15% maybe contingent, and 5% is gig. But what you're saying is it's going to flip around. So what's going to be the impact on, what is a gap? What is a skills gap that HR is going to have in the world of AI?
I think before I come to the skills gap, I think there is one fundamental thing which has to change, and that is unlearning.
Yeah.
So, for example, you gave the example of a machine. Now, I cannot hold a machine liable for any legal, violation or whatsoever, because I'm not trained like that. I'm trained that there is a black and white book
Correct.
which has a policy written on it,
Yeah.
rule number so and so applicable to such and such situation. Now, even before we go to the skills part of it, what is important is unlearn. Clean your board.
Right.
Your whiteboard is starting from the basic surface. So look at the composition of the workforce, and then start maybe building your policies and processes around it. But even to do that, as an HR, we need to build our capability of even understanding and working with technology.
Right.
Because eventually, most of the things which we have been doing maybe 7 or 8 years back,
Right.
a machine can do it easily. I remember, early days of my career when attendance management system itself was a huge and a big deal.
Yeah.
Having a PMS system was a big deal. Today, many of these things you can outsource. They can be done by machines.
Correct.
So what are the new skills you need to learn? The new skills you need to learn, how do I work with machines to get the data, to get the interpretation, and to get the information? And then from there onwards, how do I build my capability so that I'm able to make a connection to the business context?
Right.
Just to give a simple example, I could have easily said that disruption of a business model is not my problem. I have got the people at the right time to the organization.
Right.
That will no more hold true. So unlearning, learning technology as fast as technologists are learning it.
Correct.
And at the same time, adapting to the situation are the key skills which will become very, very important.
Because the whole HR ecosystem, the value chain is around the hire to retire cycle.
Correct.
Most of the HRs are focused on hiring people, onboarding them, training them, managing performance, and working them on maybe retrenching, phasing them out. And also technology is coming in each of these areas. Like today, HR tech, you have, for hiring itself, you have an ecosystem. For performance management, you have an ecosystem. But the world of AI might actually just make you do away with all of that, or you might even have to look at the next set of tools that will probably use all of this, right? Is that what you're trying to do?
I think you raised a very important question. The whole concept of hire to retire will change.
Right, yeah.
Hire to retire was applicable when I had full-time employees who might even, be 60 and leave my company.
Yeah.
When I have maximum gig, what does the hire to retire translate for gig?
Right.
What does hire to retire translate for the contingent workforce? So are your current systems capable enough to deal with these scenarios? If you have the fear of not changing your current systems, because if you change them, then it will mean a whole lot of work. You don't know that they will be outsourced, because old system will not be supported anymore after a few years. So how do I look at this concept of employee life cycle differently?
Yeah, what is hire to retire for a bot?
Exactly. So what is hire to retire for a gig? What is hire to retire for a contingent? So have I identified those scenarios? And have I fed those scenarios to the machines so that they can help me to manage it? And the only thing which I'm doing is making the connection and understanding how am I engaging with them during those times.
Correct.
So, just even talking to you about it, it is ringing the bells of fear in my mind.
Why fear?
When I say fear, if I have a bot as my employee, is my legal system ready to deal with the scenarios?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So when I say fear, it is fear as a motivation that I need to be prepared for the future.
Correct.
So I think that's where the whole thing has to really change.
Correct.
And we have not to be focused on our old books.
Yeah, exactly.
We have to really kind of burn the old books, start a clean slate.
And there's also a food for thought, right? Like, how do you hold an automated system accountable? How do you hold a bot accountable to your company, its values, its ethos? how do you make sure that you draw some lines to say that you might give out an advice which is not correct, because all of these systems are LLMs are all, they're not perfect. Automated systems are also not perfect. So how do you, if you can dig deep into, if you have this automated system, treating that as an employee, how do you bring that within the context of your organization to say that these are the cultural ethos of my organization, these are the behavioral ethos of my organization?
This is a complex question, but I have a very simple answer for this. We have to understand the basic premise. And what is the basic premise? How does a machine work? Machine works, you have some algorithm, you have some rules, you have some system which learns on its own, like
Correct.
generative AI, and
Yeah.
it starts responding to that, right? Now, when you restrict the role of machine to this level, you will not have complications. When would complications happen? When actually machines will start taking the next level, which is they actually start working like an FTE for you.
Correct.
And then you don't know how to deal with it.
So they're not support anymore. They're not
Exactly.
supporting an FT. They are an FT.
Exactly. I think that is the place where there would be a whole new definition of how do you govern and how do you hold people accountable. And I recollect, when ChatGPT came in the beginning,
Yeah.
one of the things when it passed the US legal test,
Yeah.
they said that there will be no more need of the legal professions. Now, again, it's just 4 months back old story. And today we are talking, how do we hold someone accountable? Again, legal is coming into picture.
Correct.
So what is happening? It is just we are seeing a change in that, 6 months time, that one day we said that legal is not required, other day we say legal is becoming
is
more
required.
complicated and it is
True.
more required.
True.
So I think that is what will become really more important. Where we want to bring the restriction, where do we want to create the boundary? Because eventually we will have to create the boundaries.
So what is the advice that you would give to HR leaders, HR associations and industry bodies, let's say like a NASCOM and all of these? There are large HR communities around India. So how do you think they should take the first step in even thinking about some of these thoughts that you shared here?
I think first of all, don't be afraid.
Right.
Accept it. That is number one. Number two, one step at a time. Don't rush things. And I will just give a simple example. 3 years back, when I would talk to any of my fraternity members and say, there was a lot of conversation going, we should go for this HRMS, this is cloud-based, this is old, whatever. And they were very scared to change the systems because there's a lot of information and data, right? Today, I'm saying the way AI is working, you can put an AI on your system and get what you want. So which means you have to look future with an open eyes. Take incremental steps, not a giant leaps.
Correct.
But be very open and be very ready for it. See, there are only two ways from here. Either you say, I ignore, I don't care, I'll see when it comes.
Like bury your head in the sand and figure it out.
You will be killed, sure enough.
For sure, yeah.
The other you say, I will change the world and I will be too future ready.
Yeah, you might be
Again,
ahead of your time. Actually.
Yeah, again, you might not succeed because future is highly unpredictable. We don't know how things will shape up.
Right.
So the best is taking small steps, but every step has to improvise and take you towards the destiny or to the goal. Unlearn is the key, I must say.
Great. Thank you so much, Reetu, for sharing your views. And I'm sure that the HR audience that will tune into our show will benefit a lot, because I think this is truly an unexplored area in the whole impact zone of AI on the future of work. Thank you so much for sharing your views on Close.
My pleasure. It was a pleasure being here. Thank you.